For 2 weeks running, Borough have been handed an open opportunity to take control of their destiny in the playoffs, with rivals dropping points. And for 2 weeks in a row, we've absolutely blown it, and now playoffs is out of our hands. What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Project Borough Reviewing Show, and we are back after a week's break. Of course, I was on holiday for the last week, had a great week away in Krakow, and fortunately, the first thing I did when I got back, had a bit of a sleep, was get up and go to Borough's final home game of the season, which ended up being a drab, dull, really poor 0-0 draw at home to Norwich City, and it was a game that summed up Borough's season. One of many that has summed up Borough's season, because with recent results, it gave Borough an open opportunity that if they won this game somehow, we'd have gone into the playoffs with a game to go, and we'd have took charge of our own destiny, needing only a point away at Coventry this time next week. As it happens, Borough, not for the first time, not for the second, probably not even for the 10th time this season, absolutely shit the bed and blew an open opportunity to take control, and now playoffs are out of our hands. It happened last week away at Sheffield Wednesday, and I can't tell you guys how grateful and thankful I was that I did not see a single second of that game, because it sounded like our defeat away to Sheffield Wednesday last week was down there as one of the worst of the season. And again, last week, we had results go our way. Again, a win would have got us, I think, as high as 5th at one point. We found a way of blowing the lead there, losing the game after a shambolic second half performance. And here today, at home to another team, the second in a row with nothing to play for, in mid-table. This team won, that has not won in 7 games, with an interim manager as they've just sacked Hostorup, and Borough barely laid a glove on them. And the worrying thing for me is, like Sheffield Wednesday last week, like Norwich this week, twice Borough have played teams with nothing to play for, teams who are on the beach, season's over, and they've looked like they've wanted the victories in the last 2 games, and they've had more desire than Borough in both, which I think is a damning indictment on Borough and their team, their mentality, their character, their strength. And it's telling, and it backs up a lot of the words that have been used to describe this Borough team on many occasions this season. Sometimes it's felt harsh, sometimes it's been unjust, but this Borough team are weak. They're weak, they're brittle, they're mentally weak, they've not got the mentality or the strength to deliver in big games. Time and time again, when given an open opportunity to take control of their own destiny and win a big game under pressure, more often than not, they fluff their lines. They did it last week, they did it again here, and now they've left themselves in a position where we not only need to go to Coventry and win, we also need results to go our way. Before we look at the game, we'll actually look at the permutations, because as I say, had Borough won today, we would have gone into the top 6 on goal difference, meaning a point next week would have been enough against Coventry to get us in there. But as it happens, now we need to beat Coventry, and we also need to hope that Blackburn fail to beat Sheffield United and Millwall fail to beat Burnley. Now, they are both tough fixtures. Granted, they have got 2 very tough games coming up, but Blackburn have won 4 in a row, Millwall have won 4 of the last 5. They've caught form at the end of the season when it matters, when the pressure is heightened. Borough have done the absolute opposite, winning only 1 of our last 5, losing 3 of them, and dropping displays that are quite honestly unacceptable. And for me, an argument that has been dropped around Borough quite a lot this season is it Carrick? Is it the squad? Was it January? What is to blame for Borough's current predicament? Now, I think there's a numerous collective reasons as to why Borough are in the position that they are in, but people seem to be trying to deflect the blame away from Michael Carrick and blame it solely on losing Lath, losing Doak, January completely killing us, when in fact I saw a very good stat on Twitter a couple of days ago that proving our points per game actually is hardly any better at all. With Doak and Lath, pre-January than what it was afterwards. Our average league position hasn't changed either. So I think it's a myth and a scapegoat to say that that's the reason as to why Borough are where they are. And regardless of if you think our squad was good enough, isn't good enough anymore, and it's January that's put us in this position, there is no excuse if Borough finish behind Blackburn and Millwall, maybe even Bristol City. Borough's squad, for the most part this season, say what you will about post-January and Bristol City squad maybe being a bit more on par with Borough's after our January, but over the course of the 46-game season, Borough had a much better squad than Bristol City at the start of the season. We still have a much better squad than Blackburn and Millwall. Blackburn especially, a team who've been in absolute disarray throughout this season. Millwall on an absolute shoestring budget with players who are nowhere near Borough's level. But what have they got? They've got managers who found a way of getting the most out of their team, their squad. A team that have much less sum of the parts as to what Borough's do, but they're finding a way of getting results at a crucial time. Borough, as they have done numerous times, are finding ways to throw games away. And there is no excuse for me. There is no dressing up. Whatever you want to say about Michael Carrick, however hard you want to defend the guy, there is no excuse if this Borough side finishes below Millwall and Blackburn, especially this season. Never mind Bristol City. There is no excuse whether you're talking about January, recruitment, whatever. No dressing up the fact that under this manager, that would be an embarrassment of a finish for Borough. And that's where we're heading if we don't beat Coventry, which we haven't done in as long as I can remember. So we'll get on to that a little bit more later in the video. But first of all, let's talk about Norwich. Now, again, I didn't see any of the Sheffield Wednesday game, so I can't really comment on what team I would have played, what changes I would have made heading into this one. He did opt to go with a slightly different back four because Rab Vandenberg, shock, is injured again. Another player you can't rely on when it comes to fitness in this Borough team. So Dale Fry came in alongside Johnny Howson. There were changes in and around the front four. Again, a front four that is just misfiring on all cylinders of late. Iheanacho, I think, come back in as Zaz was on the left, Whittaker was on the right with Conway up front. And quite honestly, the front four, like the team, was just miles off it in this game. You know, you're playing a team, as I say, in Norwich, who have nothing to play for. Nothing at all. They've sacked the manager. They've massively underachieved, I would say, this season. And they come to Riverside and they look galvanised. They look motivated. They looked up for it. Borough, the actual team with something to play for, the actual team with a fantastic incentive right in front of them, didn't look on it. Didn't look bothered. We were so lethargic, so sluggish. And I know there's not pace in this team, and that is a big thing that I will blame the recruitment on, and I will say hasn't helped Borough, the fact that we've lost all of our pace in this team, with Lath and Doak especially. But even without pacey players, the players on the pitch today still were just so slow. The off-the-ball movement was absolutely atrocious. You know, there were times where Travers would have the ball, and he'd be looking to quick start a counter-attack or, you know, a move for Borough, and the players are just sauntering up the pitch. They're not even bothered. I don't ever want or like to throw around that players don't care or they're not bothered or they're not trying. I never like to throw that around at a player because I think it is unfair, and I think it can be quite a harsh critic of a side and an easy excuse, an easy thing to throw at a team that quite often probably isn't true. But I find it so difficult to not at least lean into that with this team at the moment. They have everything to gain, nothing to lose. They are the chasing side in this playoff race. And today I couldn't believe how slow and uninterested they all looked. This was almost like a end of season dead rubber fixture where both teams are sat in mid-table and neither can wait for the end of the season to come. You would not think for the second week in a row Borough needed a win to get themselves into a much better position because we were just so poor in possession, so slow, not helped by the team selection. Everything we were doing was so narrow, so central. You've got a Zaz wanting to come inside, Whittaker wanting to come inside. So it's easy for Norwich. You know, we were trying to play through them centrally, and it's like trying to thread the eye of a needle. It's just not effective football. It's going to work one time every 20, and that's if your players are on song. But when they're not on it like this, every move was breaking down with so much ease. It was so easy for Norwich to just stay narrow, stay compact, block out the spaces, defend Borough, and hit us on the counter-attack. It was a pretty straightforward game plan, and they were far more effective going forward than what we were. And time again, barring a few half chances, none of which I would say pulled an outstanding, amazing save out of Angus Gunn, Borough didn't really trouble Norwich. I would say maybe we edged the chances in the first half, but it was a game that was going one way or the other. Borough never looked like we were fully in control of it. And as I say, in possession, we were really, really poor. Off the ball, we were absolutely dreadful. We had no width whatsoever, and we were incredibly predictable. That carried on into the second half, to which Norwich actually had the better of the chances. Mark Travers was forced into some huge saves in that second half. Norwich broke on us on numerous occasions to real great effect. They utilised their width really well. They utilised their pace really well, to which Borough have absolutely neither. Again, as we've seen many, many times this season, Borough make like-for-like changes with no change of tact, no real switch up. It's not really giving their defenders anything different to worry about. And regardless of which personnel you throw on the pitch, with Borough's front four at the moment, it doesn't seem to make any sort of a difference whatsoever. Aidan Morris hit the post in the second half. Gunn did tip it onto the post to his left. That was probably the only really good save he had to make. But other than that, they looked by far the more threatening. Broke on us numerous times. And as I said, Travers, as he has done so many times this season, kept us in the game time and time again. And it petered out to a 0-0 draw. Finished with boos around the stadium. There was a lap of honour, as there always is at the end of every single Borough game. I didn't stay, I'll be honest. I couldn't wait to get out of there. And from what I could hear, there were tempered boos throughout the lap of appreciation. Not sustained ones, but tempered boos. And that just sort of sums it up. It sums up the way the fans are feeling, the way that the fan base has felt for a very long time. We've all wished this season to just end long before now. And yet we still find ourselves somehow with an opportunity going into the final day. But granted, it's been made far more unlikely given Millwall and Blackburn's positive results. I'll hold my hands up. I thought they were both out of it a couple of weeks ago. I thought it was down to Bristol City, Coventry and Borough, but we now find ourselves 9th going into the final day of the season. We have to win at Coventry, which never ever happens. And as I say, even if we do, we need Millwall to fail in beating Burnley, Blackburn to fail in beating Sheffield United. Maybe that'll be a tough ask for Millwall. I think they're going to Turf Moor, which could be tough. Blackburn are going to Bramall Lane as well. So maybe we are lucky that the two teams between us and the top 6 have really tough away trips on the final day. But even then, do you trust and have faith in this Borough side that they're going to beat Coventry and do the job that's required on the final day of the season? Absolutely not. I have no faith at all in this team that we, when it comes to the crunch, get the job done. The last 2 games, we've played teams who, as I say, have had nothing to play for, and they've looked by far the more hungrier, the more likely to win of the two. We scraped past Plymouth with a last-minute contentious penalty. If we hadn't, we'd already be long gone. You then look at other previous away performances. The one to Millwall was also a really, really dismal performance. So really, since that really good away game away at Blackburn, to which we thought we'd taken charge, we've absolutely shit the bed with our form since then. And to be honest with you, even if we did find a way into the playoffs, do we really, really think this Borough team have what it takes to stand up to the task, to the occasion, and perform consistently over 2 games, 2 legs to get the job done? I can't see it in a month of Sundays. We're not consistent within 90 minutes, never mind from game to game. We will dissect Borough's season, of course, when we get to the end, but we've seen how little consistency we've put together this season, how many back-to-back wins we've had are very, very small. The longest winning run we've had is 3 games, and that was once in November. It's just been a cycle of dismal Borough displays over and over again, and You can talk about who's to blame, this, that and the other. As I say, we will fully dissect it on the channel when it is all said and done. But I think this game just summed up this Borough side, really. Mentally weak, brittle, not strong enough, can't stand up to the task when required, when the going gets tough, when you need to pull out a result. We just always fall short. Is that down to the players? Is it down to them being a reflection of the attitude of the manager? Possibly. But for me, I can't see any other alternative. The only thing that has changed for me in recent weeks, and I don't want to make a definitive answer on this yet because there is still a small chance Borough could make the playoffs, which I think it will change the outcome. But I think I'm finished with this team now. I'm finished with it. I think it's been one of the most unenjoyable Borough sides that I've witnessed in a very, very long time. The myth that this team plays good football, or we should keep Carrick because we play good football, is a load of rubbish. We've played good football here and there for 20 minutes here, half an hour there. We've not done it consistently, barely at all throughout this season. So the myth that we play good football is that. It's a myth. It's not true. And I think they are a reflection of the manager. He's come out in recent weeks and said that certain games weren't a must-win. Some of the things he said in the press have been absolutely bonkers. And I don't care if it's protecting his players. Maybe because he's protected these players so much and mollycollared them to such a degree, that's why they are such a soft touch as they are. Maybe they do need someone to come out and give them a real bollocking and a kick up their backside, because a performance like this today, with what was at stake, was unacceptable. It really, really was. They cannot come off that pitch and say they gave it their absolute all out there today. They looked like a team who were already done. They already knew their season was over. And although that might be down to personnel, and as I say, I do think that the lack of pace in this team has kneecapped us, I think they're a reflection of the manager. They made 3 changes when we'd only made 1. Norwich were the more proactive. They were the ones chasing to try and win the game. They've got nothing to play for, and yet they were being the more proactive once again to try and get the victory in this game. And I think that's just telling. And I am very much within the position now that if Borough don't make the playoffs, which is seeming very, very likely, it's time for a change for me. There is not one part of me that is remotely invested or excited for another season under Michael Carrick. I've always thought, in order for his style of play to work consistently and successfully, this Borough side would have to be probably at the level of Leeds, with a squad that good. I think unless you've got a team as good as that, his style will simply not get us enough results consistently enough, because the players aren't good enough to play in that way. So although he's not being helped, for me, I just don't think he's going to get enough out of this team to get us where we need to be. And I think he's taken us as far as he has done. And it's not rip it up, start again, Carrick's this, Carrick's that, it's been an absolute failure, he's done terrible, sack him now. It isn't. Some people don't believe that us finishing outside the playoffs is a sackable offence. Some think it isn't, and if they don't, that's fair enough. But even if it is or it isn't a sackable offence, for me, I think it is time for Borough to stop, take stock, and look at what's next in our evolution. Don't look at this as we're sacking our manager, we're starting again. Look at it as, right, let's take what we've got from this moment and look to make it better. Add pace to this team. Add some character to this team. Add some solidity, some mental strength to this team. Give them some, I don't want to say balls, but just harden them up a little bit so they can find ways of getting results when the going gets tough, because too often we find ways of throwing away results when the going gets tough. We need to be on the other side of that fine margin. Instead of losing games that we should, or losing games we shouldn't, and throwing away points we shouldn't, we should be on the other side of it, where we win points we shouldn't, we get results when we shouldn't. And I think we need a manager who's going to instill that with better in-game management, better tactical nous, who is more proactive and will take more risks, because I do think, regardless of Carrick, recruitment, whatever you think the argument is, I think this team, their attitude, I think you can just see their mentality. It is a reflection on the manager, on the touchline, and I think time and time again, with how many results we've thrown away, how many results we've pissed up the wall, it's clear to see they just simply do not have the right mindset or character to get the job done. So that's why I would take what we've got thus far and look to evolve it and take the next step next season. Does that sound like I'm writing off playoffs? Probably, I'll be honest. I think it's unlikely that we'll get the job done next week and everything will go our way. But even if we did, as I say, I think this Borough team would get eaten alive in the playoffs, if I'm honest. But we will revisit Michael Carrick. We will discuss all that in far more detail when the season is done. Chris will probably jump on the channel with me to do that in a really long bumper podcast. I cannot wait to try and attempt to dissect what the hell you want to say about this season. But a quick look at the game. As you can see, not much between the two sides in terms of XG and the chances that both sides created, but they did have the one big chance that we didn't. They were also slightly better with the ball. They had slightly more of the ball in terms of how we both used possession. It was quite even, but as I say, Borough mustered 0.67 XG, which is next to absolutely nothing in a game such as this where you just have to win. The incentive was there and the performance was absolutely poor. A little look at the starting 11, and to be honest, I don't want to dwell on it too much. The only one who really comes out with praise for me is Mark Travers. He kept us in the game with some really big saves, as he often does. I thought the defence was a little bit shaky. I thought Dyke still had a poor game up against Borges' sides. I think Fry did okay actually at times. Howson did better as the game went on, but put us in trouble a few times in the first half. Samuel Ingham Jr. struggled defensively and didn't give us any offensive output whatsoever, really. The midfield wasn't at it either. I thought they were okay in spells, but I thought Norwich's midfield did a good job on them at times, and they just never really quite had control of the game. And as always, this has been a running theme of this season, Borough's front four not clicking at all. Finazaz didn't do all that much in the game today. Iheanacho, once again, thought he linked up play quite well, but other than that, fairly ineffective. Morgan Whittaker probably had one of his worst games in a Borough shirt. Thought he was really, really poor today. And Tommy Conway, simply because of how disconnected things were in behind him, couldn't get into the game and was basically a passenger. Not his fault. He just wasn't given any real opportunities. There wasn't much off the bench, really, from Force Giles or Bergsog when they did come on. And we will finish once again with the league table. As I say, we all know the permutations. But as I've said, for me, this Middlesbrough side, to finish below Blackburn and Millwall, I think is shocking. No disrespect to either of them two clubs, but Borough, even post-January, should have a much better side and should be way above them two teams. The fact that we've lost 17 games this season, I think is shocking. I really do. And no team deserves to be in the playoffs having lost 17 games, almost as many as what we've won. And as we've said over and over again, if this team was, I think, in most of the last 10, 20 championship seasons, we'd have been dead and buried long ago. We'd be sinking into the middle of mid-table, and our season would have been finished a long time ago. So it is no compliment to Borough that we still have something to play for, as unlikely as it is on the final day. We're extremely fortunate that the league is as poor as it is. So poor that we've got Millwall and Blackburn ahead of us, who have been pretty poor at times this season, but they find themselves ahead of Borough come the crunch. And I also find it interesting that Blackburn, Millwall and Coventry all twisted and changed their manager this season, and they're reaping the rewards for it. Maybe post-Watford, Borough should have done the same. So I'll be back at before the weekend to preview the final day shootout away to Coventry City, where it is a must-win for Borough. I know we've said that many times this season, but it simply is. At this stage, Borough's season, I think, will come to an end at the CBS. I'd be astounded if the outcome is any different from that. And then shortly after, we will be looking to dissect this season and try and pull apart what has gone wrong. Because for me, there is so much to go into. I can't even comprehend the level of discussion that we'll need to sort of really get a grip on Borough's season and what has gone wrong. But I do, for me, feel like it is the end for a lot of players in this team. It is the end for the manager. And I think we are at a point now where we simply have to look to evolve and move on to what is next, because this season is on the brink of petering out into one that has been nothing short of a failure. And quite honestly, if Borough finish 9th, even if we finish 10th, an embarrassment, an absolute embarrassment if things finish the way they're heading. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, whether you're a Borough fan, Norwich fan or a neutral, your thoughts on Carrick, what Borough should do next, and whether you think there is any chance that this team will somehow find themselves in the top 6 come next weekend. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, do support it here on the channel, but you can also on the podcast providers via the link tree in the description, where you can go onto the podcast providers, listen to these on the go, and of course give me a 5-star rating over there as well, would be much appreciated. And you can also find me online, where I do more short form content On my link tree, there's also links to my X account and TikTok where I do short form Borough content over there as well. But until next time, Borough's season is all but done. Part of me is disappointed, part of me is frustrated, part of me is angry, but honestly, most of me is relieved that this is finally over. But until next weekend, we've got one game to go, and thankfully, we can have a break away from this team. But until then, do take care, and I'll see you all